I didn't want a Halloween to go by without us talking.
No, we have to do something.
Yeah, I mean, I
am sitting the way I set up. Oh, bud.
Sorry, that's just going to happen a lot.
Okay.
I don't know what's wrong with me, but it's not COVID. I've had that. It feels different.
Okay. That's good. This is just a normal sick.
This is just some other plague.
Yeah.
What do you fear most in the world?
The possibility that love is not enough.
It is happening again.
Cinesthesia, a movie podcast featuring Jason Michaelich and Jim Hickox, begins now.
Pull the string.
How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you? Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween! I'm good. I'll be better when I'm full of candy, though.
Oh, yeah. Although I heard you were giving out Play-Doh.
Oh, we usually give out some Play-Doh. Like, we have candy and Play-Doh, and we offer the choice.
That's nice. I mean, I thought Play-Doh was a nice idea also.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Most kids take Play-Doh.
Yeah, because they have lots of candy, and then like, oh, whoa.
Yeah. And then you're like, what color Play-Doh do you want? And they're like, purple. And you're like, yeah, here you go, bud. Here's a purple Play-Doh.
Yeah.
Which also means that I'll be even more full of candy, because we have enough candy that if every kid wants candy, we can give them candy. But they won't. A lot of them will take Play-Doh, and then I'll eat all that candy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we haven't gotten any candy yet, because I don't trust us to not eat it all before Halloween.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Ours is all hidden.
Did you like hide it and then give yourself blunt head trauma?
Yeah.
So that you would find it.
Yeah. Which sort of works because you just find the big dent in the wall and you're like, it's near this somewhere.
Something happened here.
Yeah. There was an event here and it's probably candy related.
Well, I'm on the verge of death, and it seemed like a good time to catch up with you.
Yeah.
My voice. We should definitely record a podcast when my voice sounds like a frog took a shit in my throat.
Yeah, that's what the people come here for, Jason.
Well, I figured we're we're having a little Halloween reunion here, so one of us should sound like we are of The Walking Dead.
It's true, yeah.
I clawed my way out of a grave to record this.
Just to record this. Which, that's admirable ambition.
How's your season going?
I'm writing a screenplay right now about a ship captain named Admiral. They're different words. I forgot they were different words.
The admirable.
How's my seasoning going? Is that what you asked?
Yeah,
am I salty enough?
How seasoned are you today?
Pretty seasoned. Someday it'll cool off here in Texas, but for right now, I am a well-seasoned boy.
Right now, you just gotta add a little spice to that boil.
Yeah.
Just settle down here with some potatoes and lemons and sprinkle that Old Bay in.
Good? Is that the answer? I think I'm good. I think everything's good.
I don't know.
Everything's fine.
Does
when I wake up in the morning right now,
When I wake up.
before I put on my makeup, I have no voice like every morning.
Whoa.
It's
It's gonna be worse tomorrow.
Oh yeah, but I just wake up and I'm already having to answer questions from my children.
Oh,
Like, like if I drink something warm, it slowly shifts back to something like this. So
It's like you're full
That's
of
good.
crystals.
yeah, I'm hoping to keep this going all the way through actual Halloween, so that I can just make spooky voices the whole time.
Really freak out the... Do you guys get trick-or-treaters?
I don't think so. We never have.
Yeah.
And we're not usually home.
Oh, right, because
anyway.
you would be out trick-or-treating, presumably. That makes sense.
Yeah, we usually head over to a friend's neighborhood and trick or treat. I mean, by usually, I mean we did once, and then there was a pandemic.
Oh, right, and then... Right.
So then, hopefully this year we'll do that again, because
Right.
Gus really wants to dress up like a spider. So
Oh. That's really sweet.
yeah, he's sick too. We had to take him in for a COVID test this morning, and he was talking to the doctor at the urgent care about how he was going to be an orange and black widow spider.
Nice.
So I got to get started on that.
In some ways, that's scarier than a normal Black Widow because you wouldn't expect it to kill you.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this Black Widow is campy.
Yeah.
I have nothing to fear. I'm hearing words and whispers.
Is your apartment haunted?
I mean, yeah, by a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. Our friend was taking care of Geyer today,
Sure.
and she was dropping him off, so I went downstairs to get him. Ed Gus demanded to come along, so he put on his rain boots over his pajamas and came downstairs. And then he walked all the way to the end of the driveway and then said, "It's too cold. I'm going back," and just ran back in the house. So then I get Geyer and I grab the bag and I finally make it back up the stairs. And I get to the landing right before our apartment, and Gus's rain boots are just sitting on the landing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, there's boots. And Gus jumps out and goes, "Did I scare you? I left these boots to scare you." I was like, yeah, it's pretty scary, buddy. I didn't know what happened. But yeah, so I was trying to think of what, because I just didn't want let a lot of time go by, but to let a Halloween go by, it couldn't be done. It couldn't be done. That said, I didn't have time to plan a movie to watch or have a topic or anything. But I was just wondering, I don't know. I just thought maybe we just talk about horror movies. I don't know. Do what we do and get absurdly high altitude takes on things. Step way back and be like, what does the word even mean, man? Like a horror?
Yeah, what is that? A
horror?
Is that a noun?
Is it gonna roar? Are you roaring in your movies now? I don't know. We're gonna make less sense than usual, but I don't know. We talk about horror movies all the
That's
time.
also sort of a Halloween tradition, though, right?
It is, yeah.
It's diving deep down a spiral, just sliding straight to the bottom. We really get to the bottom of things, but when we say get to the bottom, we don't mean we're really understanding. It just means we're
No, we just mean
under
we're
a pile of
turning up
ourselves.
something and finding the grotesque, decaying, moldy underside
The
of
slimy
it, but
bits.
not to any purpose.
No,
there's no nutrition or information to be gleaned.
no.
It's just gross.
Yeah. So honestly, if anyone listens to this, shame on you, friend.
Yeah, my dad is watching Dune in the other room.
The new Dune?
Yeah, which I I told you I wanted to do a bit where I pretended that I watched that but thought it was the Eternals.
Yeah, I like that
just
bit.
kept looking for Kumail.
Yeah.
But I couldn't figure out how to actually like organically create it or convey what was happening.
Yeah. Anyone who listens would just be like, he's in it. He's there. Yeah. No, I think it's great.
He's right
bit.
there. What happened? I just watched the Eternals. There's just lots of worms. I mean, I don't actually know if there's any worms. I saw the first 2 minutes while I was setting him up to ice his back on the couch, and I was like, well, this is real dumb already. I'm glad I'm not watching this.
I bet it'll be slow and have a couple of pretty shots in it. There must be a worm. How could there not be a worm?
I'm sure there's a worm. I'm sure there's, but it's probably like 2.5 hours, and then they're like, look, and you see the like beginning of a worm coming out, and it fades out, and it's like, next time on Dune. No, I don't know. I'm sure it's fine. I'm enjoying everybody that doesn't know Dune on the internet finding out that there's a character named Duncan Idaho in it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They're like, because, what the hell kind of science fiction name is that?
Yeah, and they're not wrong.
How much of Dead Men Walk did you get through?
I watched about 20 minutes at about 70% attention, and then I skipped through and watched a few other parts at about 40% attention.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. Was that a movie you watched with your dad?
Yeah. Yeah, just last
one.
night or the night before. Actually, over multiple nights, because I haven't sat through a movie like all on its own. Or an adult movie. I've sat through Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory a lot of times.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Jason, I saw someone saying that they're, first of all, making another Willy Wonka movie, and it has Timothée Chalamet in it, and I saw someone referencing on the internet, they were like, haha, sexy Willy Wonka, which, first of all, Jason, implies that they don't think that Gene, I want to say Gene Hackman, but that's definitely wrong. Why can't I think of his name? What's his name?
Well, he's a little wilder than Gene Hackman.
Oh yeah, because they don't think Gene Wildman is sexy, which is unequivocally wrong, but also implies that they think they have better taste in men than Gilda Radner, and like, you can gobble my shoelaces, man. I won't stand for that.
It's also, even on their own terms, like, a people's sexiest man alive has already played Willy Wonka since then.
Oh, that's true. I forgot that happened.
Yeah.
That Brad Pitt was Willy Wonka in the stage revival. the pits of candy, they called it. The deep chocolate pit.
Yeah, I guess Timothée Chalamet is the guy who's gonna just be in everything for
the rest of our lives.
And then, well, no, I was thinking more he'll probably be in everything for like 4 or 5 years, and then we will never hear about him again.
Yeah, that's
we're,
probably true.
Paying attention,
because eventually he'll like, you know how you like hit puberty and you do puberty things, and then for a lot of men in their early 20s, they kind of like thicken up a little bit, like around the gullet. He's gonna hit that, and then he's not gonna be like the world's favorite twink, you know? He's gonna be like a normal adult-looking man, and everyone's gonna be like, why do we want to look at this guy?
Or even just there's a shelf life on, even if he looks more or less the same. Like, I don't know. I want to say that we've been through this cycle a bunch of times, but
sure,
by definition, I can't remember the names of any of the previous people from the cycle, so I have no proof.
Here's the thing is that I think just because we live sort of next door to the cycle, it feels like it's been Timothée Chalamet all our lives. You know what I mean? Just whoever the last guy was feels like it's the same guy.
It has always been Chalamet.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at my notes
Jason, what do you think was the first thing in a movie that scared you, Jason? That's a question that I thought of earlier today that I meant to ask you.
Horny vampires? No, I don't. I knew when I wrote that I wouldn't remember why I was writing that. But then I did it anyway.
It feels like a Craig Wright Split Picks opener.
To say horny vampires?
Yeah. No, to ask what the first thing in a, he always opens with a sort of like with like a key in that's like some kind of, I don't know. It's like he'll ask sort of like a broad movie question, and then he'll have somewhere to go with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's
and then I always like step all. He's like, "What's your favorite movie snack?" And I'm like, "I like black beans." And he's like, "I wanted to talk about candy." And you're like, "Oh, sorry."
Boston baked beans.
I do like Boston baked beans. 50 cents for a cardboard box of candy? Let me in, man. Ding dong. Let me in that store.
I remember being really confused when I was a kid because I watched a cartoon. Was it like a Little Audrey cartoon, maybe?
Little Audrey sings while the sun is out, make hay. Though she's not and thinks there's a lot of sense in what little Audrey has to say.
Where she eats too much candy or wants a lot of candy and then like bonks her head and has a dream where she goes to Candyland.
Okay.
And she's running around Candyland and everything's made of candy. But then, for no reason I could understand, there was just a big pot of beans labeled Boston baked beans.
That's funny.
And I was just like, why are there baked beans in the Candyland?
Because
the end of that story.
Because they're made with molasses, Jason.
Yeah. Come to think of it, maybe I'm just making this up, but I think the cartoon might have had the Boston baked beans like overflow, which is actually
and they were actual beans.
Well, no, it's just kind of a fucked up cartoon reference to the like molasses disaster.
That's true. They were like, haha, remember when everyone in Boston died under molasses?
Like a
bunch
1950s
of
cartoon version of somebody doing a 9/11 joke on Adult Swim now or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was just in Little Audrey.
Edgy, edgelord, little edgelord Audrey.
You've got the Tommy Ache blues, the Tommy Ache blues, the Tommy Ache blues. You've got the Tommy Ache blues from eating all the candy you did.
But yeah, I'm trying to bring our podcast up to professional snuff. I'm trying to
snuff it up.
Match the the great example set by our Lord and Master Craig Wright.
And good luck.
Yeah, no, I couldn't. I was listening to your Split Picks episodes recently, as I told you.
Yeah.
And I'd listened to them before, but I was really struck. Like, Craig really does have like a radio voice.
Yeah, he does.
Like he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
It was very soothing to listen to.
I went on a short nature hike with Shane Fender the other day.
Oh yeah,
and which was lovely. He was like, "Let's go birding," and I was like, "Okay." And we were talking about Split Picks, and I was like, it's like a little intimidating because they're like, Craig's like, all right, so we're going to do this director. And then he and Bennett, the only two I've done have been with Bennett, he and Bennett go and just watch every movie by that director, And I'm like, I watched 3 of them. And then I have to act like I'm a reasonable adult also, But like Bennett, I think, loves doing that. I get that impression that he's like excited about watching a lot of movies, but Craig doesn't care about movies. He's like a guy who loves music and wants to write about music and has been like, unfortunately for him, roped into this world where every nerd he's working with is like, did you see the movie film? And he's like, and he like does his due diligence anyway and watches every movie by some terrible director that we want to talk about.
Well, again, he's a professional.
I know. It's just, it's very admirable.
And he's stuck in a world with us.
Yeah. I'm just slowly dragging him down into the...
Yeah, I was trying to think of what we could talk about, besides just talking like we're talking right now.
Sure.
And I was just trying to come up with any kind of questions that would lead us to talking about, like, what the hell do horror movies even mean to us?
Sure.
Like, they're fun, and we love them, obviously, and we never ever stop talking about them, even when it's not Halloween. Even when we're like, next time we're going to talk about like this issue in art and this concept and these great movies, we're like, Jason, Freddy. But yeah, like I don't. Why do you watch them?
I know why I started.
Yeah, you told that story on Split Picks.
Did I? Okay.
Right? I think that might have been what started me thinking about these questions, because I knew we were going to talk.
Oh, you know what?
I hoped we were going to talk, and I started listening to what you had just been saying, and it made me start thinking about like how we started watching horror movies and what we even thought about them. I
think on Split Picks I told a story about my mom running The Exorcist when I was sick, right? Which is a real thing that happened, but that didn't actually start me watching horror movies. I might have said it did, but I was lying if I did. Because I may have told you this before, and maybe I've said this in a Cinesthesia recording. It's hard to remember. But I didn't care about movies in like a nerd way for most of my young life, right? It wasn't really until undergrad. It was like Scott's class that made me be like, oh, movies are a real thing, right? Yeah. Which I think was probably true of a lot of us. But before that, I was like, I just watched, whatever there was, but I didn't like, I don't know. I didn't, there wasn't like a thing I was pursuing for my own eyeballs. And then we watched, it was watching a bunch of like avant-garde, a bunch of experimental stuff where I was like, oh, these people are like trying things. They're not just being like, here's a guy and he's gonna punch another guy and then at the end he'll kiss a lady. They were like, what is this? Look at this rectangle. What can I do with this rectangle? Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's like, it's like painting and music all at the same time. And then, so that was like an alchemical shift that happened in my brain. And then I was looking, then you're watching movies and you're like, you don't quite get as much out of the truth about cats and dogs once you've sort of found that other thing, and so I was looking for it and I realized that I found that drive in like B movies and genre films. And so that's kind of what pulled me into it, was that I was like, oh, to quote the greatest man who ever lived, I love trash. And I don't know. And so, so I just started deep diving, and then through that, I sort of fell in love with horror. But even now, it's like horror that's too cleanly made. I couldn't give two nostrils on lend, It's like any movie. It's like if they're making it, if it's like too slick, I'm like, cool. But I think that because genre films come from that, or like really thrived off studio for a long time, they come from the sort of like the B lots and the like cheaper world. There's just, they had a lot of more experimentation or people accommodating their own limitations, right? Which is a similar element to experimentation in some ways. And so the genre audience, I think, is a lot more accepting of that sort of experimentalism and that sort of like looking for boundaries and things. And so because the audience is more accepting, there's just more space for it. And I think more people have more room to play with it. That's why I like to make horror movies, right? I mean, I love a rubber monster, but the reason that I like to make genre films when I'm making films is because I can do weird stuff. And I think if I was making a straight drama and I tried to like put in a 2-minute monologue where someone's just talking straight at the camera and there's no other sound or whatever, people would be like, this is not what I came here for, But a genre audience is they're like, cool, you did a weird thing. It made me feel something.
Yeah, well, I mean, genre has that that benefit almost of having like if you get the basic requirements taken care of, if you check the boxes that you have to check, then everything around it is, I want to say, is less important in some ways, but it's not that it's, to me, it's the most important thing.
Sure.
But in terms of like, I don't know, in terms of having technically created the thing that you set out to supposedly set out to create, which is what people, I guess, care about in terms of being able to engage with something.
Sure.
Or like being able to sit down and go, like if you made that drama with some, strange stylistic elements, it would probably be, I would venture to say it would probably end up being a more, like fully interesting piece of art maybe by the end of the day.
Agreed.
But I mean, you'd be like making a Mark Rappaport movie, and you wouldn't be making something that a large audience would necessarily, or just a scattered audience would necessarily just start taking in,
right?
Because it's there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like you put a monster in a monster movie.
Yeah.
Well, then you made a monster movie. Yeah. Anything else you do, it's still a monster movie. So they're on like at that initial level of buy-in, you can get there.
Yeah.
But kind of like I don't know, like it's like a band that has such a simple and straightforward rhythm section that everybody else can start going off into the stratosphere because it's just holding it down.
Yeah, exactly. And it also like horror has a long history of just hitting those benchmarks. You know what I mean? Largely for financial reasons. There's a lot of horror movies where it'll be like, the stabbing monster from beneath the well, and it'll be like 74 minutes of like a dapper guy walking around an estate in black and white, and then a monster will pop out of the well and stab him, and you're like, we got what we came here for, because that's all they could afford to do. And so I think
it creates like almost an accidental minimalism all on its own in some instances, right? Like there's this whole genre or subgenre of these things that are so bare bones, like you said, almost by financial necessity, that they become experiments in and of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're like, we can only afford 2 minutes of monster scream time, and the guy that we said is the star we only have for one day. So what do we put in the other 80 minutes of movie?
There's a segment in that movie I made you watch part of. Dead Men Walk from 1943. That I made you watch it for totally other reasons, because it reminded me of something else. But there's this one segment right in the middle of it where there's just all that's happening plot wise is somebody's leaving one secret location and somebody else is seeing them leave it and going in and looking at it.
Okay.
And then the other person is coming back. But the way it's all shot is in this very sort of locked down and symmetrical way on a very limited set.
Yeah.
And so it becomes almost this abstraction of actors moving in spaces because like one person walks across the screen and then another person walks in at an angle and then another person walks at another angle, and it's just like watching it, I'm like, oh wow, I could put this on a loop and just have an experiment in body motion.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a Poverty Row film. They didn't have money or time, so they're like, all right, let's knock out 17 shots that we need today with 2 people in one set. Like,
right? Which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, how can we shoot 8 minutes of screen time in 12 minutes?
The reason I actually... go ahead.
I was just going to ask what the reason was that you actually had me watch that film.
Oh, well, aside
hey, Jason,
from
what was the reason?
Wait, let's get it clean.
I was going to wait until you started talking.
I was going to cough as soon as you started talking.
We both did the same gag. Hoist by our own jokes.
Do you know that hoist by your own petard actually is a reference to farting?
What?
That's what the petard is.
Is
somebody
a fart?
lifted up by their fart.
I love that.
Hoist on your own petard.
I love that. And that, so it's like you would be like, no, somebody else farted, but because everyone saw you float up into the air because you farted so hard, they're like, we know you did it.
Hoist on your own petard.
You were hoist.
Somebody told me that, and I'm just believing it.
Yeah.
Because why?
I'm not
going
to fact check.
Ever try to destroy that?
No, that's beautiful.
No, I told you to watch that for a couple of reasons. One, it's the only movie I've seen in a long time, and I knew I'd probably bring it up. But first, just the opening part where somebody just throws a book called History of Vampires into the fire, and then a face appears and says just absolute nonsense for 30 seconds. It doesn't track at all.
You creatures of the light, how can you say with absolute certainty what does or does not dwell within the limitless ocean of the night? Are the dark enshrouded legions of evil not but figments of the imagination, because you and your puny conceit say they cannot exist? Whence came the story, told in frightened whispers down through the ages, of witch and warlock, werewolf and vampire, and all the spawn of hell, born on the sable wings of night to the unholy communion of the witch's Sabbath?
I watched that much of the movie, and I was like, I might have already seen everything Jason needed me to see in this movie.
Yeah, that was definitely the best
Such
part.
a bold move. They're like everything you know about monsters in the fire. We're gonna make up our own rules. Who cares?
Yeah, and they kind of do.
Delightful.
Actually. It's like the whole story is there's two brothers, both played by George Zucco, and one of them has dedicated himself to a life of medicine and like being a good member of his community, and the other one just fucked around with dark magic and witchcraft his whole life, and he had just died at the beginning of it, and then he instantly just comes back as a vampire because he was really into witchcraft. It's like, all right, yeah, sure, that's why.
Right, why not?
And there's like a fun twist on the whole thing, because there's like ornery townsfolk who start to think that the doctor is committing the murders, and then because they
it's his
look
twin.
alike, they actually do start seeing, like, they'll see him biting somebody, and they'll be like, "Oh no, I saw him. He's gone crazy."
That's such a good comedy of errors to throw into your vampire movie.
Yeah, it really. I mean, it's a short movie, and they don't waste any time, and they have a lot of little twists there. But so I enjoyed that. But one of the reasons I enjoyed it so much is because it was reminding me of this. Just that idea of using the same actor for multiple roles in something, but in like a non-gimmicky way.
Yeah,
just like in a very straightforward manner. Because I feel like it's not done that often, and when it is done, it's usually like, I don't know, like I like adaptation and all, but it's definitely that's definitely
a goofy movie.
Hey, look what we're doing! We're doing it this way. And it. I had it on my mind because one of the only other movies I watched recently was, for reasons passing my understanding, I actually watched The Many Saints of Newark, a Sopranos story that just came out.
All right.
Even though I don't even like The Sopranos that much, that's one of those cultural products that I respect more than I actually enjoy it.
Sure.
And I probably don't even respect it quite as much as people would want me to. But yeah, I don't know why. For some reason, I ended up watching it while I was doing other stuff.
I'm not going to judge you.
I'm not even judging. I'm just a little confused, especially because it was not very good.
Sure.
But it had one really, really good joke.
Yeah.
Or at least I read it as a joke, and I feel pretty confident that it was done as a joke. But so it's a gangster film, and you don't need to know that much about what's happening. But one of the characters in it, the main character is this gangster, and he has an old, like, really bellicose, drunk, violent gangster father played by Ray Liotta.
Great.
And then pretty early in the film, the main character just beats Ray Liotta to death.
Okay. All right.
In the beginning of actually one of the, like, long treading jokes in the film, which is that this main gangster character, who's like supposed to be tortured and like sort of maybe a good person somewhere in him, or he wants to be. And also everybody thinks he's like the coolest gangster. But the only people he kills in the entire movie are family members that he gets mad at and accidentally beats to death.
Wow.
So it's like that, you know, you don't do that by accident. And I thought that was actually kind of funny.
Yeah, no, that's good.
But the one great moment is, I don't know, like halfway through the movie, something like that. I don't know. The main character goes to visit his dad's brother in prison.
Okay.
And they don't actually prep you that's what he's doing. You just see him at prison visiting somebody, and then Ray Liotta walks out.
Oh, that's really
and
funny.
he's just staring at him in this like kind of alien way of looking at him, like, what's happening here? Well, who is this? And then the main character's just looking up at him, and like they just hold on it for a few seconds. Where if you're at all paying attention, you're just like, what is what? Which I thought was a great joke.
That's really nice.
And it's sort of like exactly the kind of thing I would want to do.
Yeah.
If I ever had the opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like you're like, hey, you don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
And your audience is like, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
You just hold on it for a few seconds, let them stare at each other. That's really good.
Yeah. Like, I saw that person's head caved in. Like, what, is this just suddenly not a realistic gangster film? Is he resurrecting him?
This is where he respawns. It's actually based on a video game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you have to return to the prison to start over.
Yeah.
Like, did you save my progress? Did you bring me my saves?
Oh, man, I had really upgraded the pistol. I hope I can find another upgraded pistol.
Yeah, but
I put so many gems in it.
So this movie is not worth watching, except for the fact that I had to get through a lot of it just to get that moment. And that moment really was pleasant.
Yeah, that's good. And that's a joke that you can't have out of context, which is nice.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I couldn't just jump into the movie and watch that
Ray
scene.
Liotta's in this movie.
Yeah.
As opposed to, wait, Ray Liotta was in this movie. Why is he still in this movie?
Yeah. Also, does that mean... So this kid's dad and uncle were twins, but also got matching plastic surgery?
I mean, they actually are... They're impressively scant with the information.
Oh, that's good.
Like, they never say twins.
Oh,
they never... like talk about who's older or what, and they definitely when he's playing the dad who gets killed, he's got like a lot of extra like poundage on him.
Oh, okay, sure.
And he just like he's this lecherous, glutton kind of character.
Okay.
And then when you see Ray Liotta in the prison, he's like extremely lean.
Oh, interesting.
And just sort of like gaunt and looking at him. And so but it makes him look even more like a ghost.
Yeah.
But then I was really, really happy that the one good thing I thought they did is they didn't like lean into the metaphor of it.
Right.
Or try to play it up as anything. They just had that moment. And then they had like their own relationship going forward from that.
That's really fun. I wonder, do you think they were doing an Arrested Development riff?
I didn't even think of that. I hope so. I was going to say the only other place I feel like I've seen that move, that using an actor twice, is on television, because you have so long to go. With episodes, you can bring people back.
Sure. Like on Law and Order, Empires or whatever.
Yeah, so you do it like incidentally sometimes, and it doesn't really have an impact because you could read in the like you're not remembering like, oh, that person is this person,
right?
But there's two times I can think of where it was really significant. One is Twin Peaks, where Laura Palmer's cousin comes to town. Like halfway through one of the seasons, and she's played by Shirley.
Oh, right.
But it's funny. Not the reason why it works and why it or why it matters to me is that nobody really comments on it.
Yeah,
they're not like, oh, you're the spitting image. Like, she's just there.
She's just a cousin. Whatever.
Yeah, and the other one is in Deadwood, which I expect you haven't
I have
watched. But I should probably make you at some point.
Okay.
The pilot's directed by Walter Hill.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll watch it.
Yeah. And then he left because he's like, I like to have control over things. And David
Sure.
Milch was like, no, I'm going to lie on the floor in a trailer and dictate all of these like script monologues while people type around me.
I recently heard, I haven't confirmed this. I heard that if you direct the pilot, then you get like EP credit and just get paid out for the rest of the show. So Walter Hill did played that the best he could have. If that's
absolutely. I mean, not having to work with Milch and then
but also bringing in all that. I mean, Deadwood isn't the biggest show to bring in all the money from. But, you know.
Well, they came back for a
did
movie,
well.
so there's some payout. But they do this thing in there where in the first season there's the character based on an actual historical person, Jack McCall, who kills the real person who actually shot Wild Bill Hickok.
Oh, okay.
And they do that in the show.
Sure.
And it's this big turning point for the show because the whole show is about like it's about a settlement that's about to become probably part of America officially. So it's a lawless place that law is coming to, sort of like.
Sure.
It's a place that people have gone specifically because there's no law.
Right.
Sort of like a libertarian paradise, but because it's now being built up and more people are coming and there's more money at stake and more community present. They're having to sort of create civilization in miniature.
Sure.
Like all of the trappings of civilization are coming in. So like that's a big turning point because it's just this celebrity is murdered and they have to figure out, well, what are we going to do with them? They're not actually, there's no law. Are we going to have a trial, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a big deal. But that character just disappears after a few other episodes. Like they dispatch with them. But he's played by Garrett Dillahunt, who's fantastic.
Okay.
And I think, I mean, Milch is the kind of guy who I'm sure thought about it on some level or at some point, but would probably just say like, oh, I really, we liked Garrett. We wanted to bring him back. So they bring him back as another character.
Okay.
In the next season. But this character is completely fabricated and is like how to describe it? I mean, he's basically just like he's a advanced agent for George Hurst.
Okay.
The like gold the gold mine mogul, sort of the he comes into the show as the kind of icon of growing capital.
Sure.
Sort of like where this whole project is headed, is this sort of domination by these titans of finance. And so Garrett Dillahunt is playing his advance man, who's coming into the camp to like scout out things and set things up for Hearst's arrival to sort of just take over all the gold mines.
Sure.
But he's also a psychotic serial killer.
Oh.
Who, like, they make it clear that he's almost like they're not actually making him like Jack the Ripper or anything, and they're not leaning into it that's like sensationally, but he definitely is like obsessed with like certain prostitutes and ends up killing them, and it's this whole other level that the show hasn't even dealt with before, and to have it be the repeat actor to come back and do that, who's also acting as sort of the like I said, advanced man, the harbinger of this giant force that's just going to come and devour everything. It's a very resonant choice.
Yeah.
So it's like, this dual actor thing. The only times I can think of that it's been done in this big of a way, but there's no commenting on it. Like you're not supposed to think like, oh, that's Jack McCall. Right. Like they give every indication that they would assume you wouldn't even notice, but also, how could you not notice?
Right. So yeah, especially it's one season later. It's not like a show that ran for 15 seasons, and so it's 8 seasons later, and he's a much older man.
Yeah.
And he's been disfigured in an accident in between.
That was sort of Halloween-y. I was talking about a serial killer.
Yeah. Murderers. That's what's more Halloween-y than murder.
Yeah. Let's all have... That's the addition of serial killer to the like goof 'em up ghosts and goblins world of Halloween is really one of the most striking shifts.
It is weird. It is weird, right?
Like, oh, there's a Dracula and a Frankenstein and Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
Like, well, I don't know.
Yeah. You're like, one of those has really killed a lot of people. I mean, I don't know what your belief system is, but Draculas have killed 0 people.
Well, I mean, probably a Dracula actor has killed somebody.
A dractor? A
dractor. Probably somebody got run over by a dractor.
Yeah, that's probably true.
What happened to him? Oh, he got in front of the dractor. Dracted right over. The only other movie that I think of where they do that is Dead Ringers, and I can't remember. I feel like they don't hang a hat on it in Dead Ringers either. I feel like they're just like, it's 2 guys. They don't hang a hat on it, but like those guys are supposed to be twins, right?
Yeah. They're supposed to be completely
kind of like,
identical, right?
Yeah. Which I guess, I mean, I'm giving all this credit to Dead Men Walking, too, which they are also
identical twins. Yeah.
But there's something special about it where like they don't say they're identical twins. They're just his brother.
Oh, that's funny.
And like his brother's played by, and like they don't try to make them look alike. But they're the same actor.
Yeah.
There's something about that, like not commenting too much on it. Like Dead Ringers, I adore Dead Ringers.
Right.
I'm never gonna,
but it's in the title.
Speak ill of it. Yeah, it's like the focus of the film, and like watching Jeremy Irons perform against himself.
Yeah.
They're doing all of the trick shots where they can be in the same shot together.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it does seem like it would be. Well, I guess I was gonna say it seems like it would be like fertile ground for some sort of horror treatment.
Yeah,
but I actually think that it would be too tempting to really comment on it for most people.
Let me pitch you, Jason.
Okay,
it's like It's the same. We're starting from the same basis as Dead Man Walking, right? Where it's a Dracula movie, but like throw away everything you know about Draculas. Because in this movie, we start with, we can even have classic, Dracula rolls in on a boat. Who cares? He could come in on a speedboat, right? And then he's played by, is Don Johnson still alive? He's played by Don Johnson.
Just a speedboat full of rats, and he's just screaming rats as he pulls.
Yeah, they come rushing off onto the dock, and everyone's like, "What the hell?" Don Johnson steps off, looking all dapper, and then everyone that he Draculas after he Draculas them is also played by Don Johnson. But they continue living their normal life, right? People are just like, "You feeling all right today?" And they're like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And they're like, "Okay."
This has legs.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Also, like, what a tour de force for Don Johnson or whoever, is alive and wants to play that role.
It reminds me of a really great horror comic by Michael DeForge, who's this, I don't know if you know him, but he's this terrific.
I've definitely read something by Michael DeForge.
I mean, he's incredibly prolific, and his stuff's all over the place. But there was a comic he did in his one-man anthology, Lose. I don't remember the name of the comic, but the story was about this disease called Staceface, where just everyone and every living creature slowly developed the face of this one girl named Stacy.
That's really good.
Yeah. And he just, it's this thing that's so absurd, but he develops it in this slow enough and sort of oblique enough way that it does end up feeling kind of terrifying by the end of it. You're just like, oh yeah, what would it feel like to just walk into the woods and then a deer also has this face? It's like, oh that deer has Stace's face.
That's really good. This might be the only Michael DeForge I've ever read. It's Queen. It's in Best American Comics anthology.
Oh, sweet, yeah.
Real gnarly.
Yeah, he's a crazy dude.
I really only showed you that because I was proud of myself for finding it so fast.
That was good. I saw you looking around the desk. I was like, oh boy, is he going to do it? Is he going to do it? Horny vampires. I wrote down horny vampires, and I don't know why.
I mean,
vampires are always horny, so
They're always
I must
horny.
have been thinking that there was specifically something else to say about it.
Yeah.
Because it's not just
It is
like,
a
oh yeah, they're
hallmark
horny.
of
Like, yeah, that's...
vampiroticism. Let me pitch you on something, Jason. I watched a different vampire movie this afternoon because my class is supposed to watch it this week. Ganja and Hess.
Oh yeah,
I'd only seen one time before, and it was a couple of years ago. So I was like, I need to rewatch this. I rewatch all my class's movies, but this one in particular, it was a last minute substitution for Sweet Sweetback because Sweet Sweetback disappeared from Canopy. None of that matters. What matters is I was watching a vampire movie, and I tried to go for, I don't know what, the vampirism, I guess. I was aiming for that in my head in a sentence I was forming just to myself. And my brain scooted right on past vampirism and landed on vampiracy. And then I was like, oh, vampirates.
yeah.
How much money can we get for that?
The wages of vampiracy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? They're vampire pirates. They roll into town. They roll into town on a boat just like any other vampire.
Yeah.
But they're all pirates. I mean, and vampires. They're both.
Yeah, we should be able to do something with that.
Right? Water vampires? Are there water vampires?
I don't... Traditionally, I think you could submerge a vampire in water to kill it.
Oh, right. That's true. I think it has to be flowing water, though, right? Like a stream. Does the ocean count?
That might be. It's been... Jim, it's been a long time since I was 9 years old reading cover to cover the Vampire Encyclopedia.
But that's good,
with
though.
the full intention of becoming a vampire, like, tracker.
Oh, sure.
You know.
I'm sorry that didn't pan out for you.
Well, yet.
Yeah. There's still time. Jason, that's even better, because if they fall off the boat into the ocean, they go to Davy Jones' blood locker, Davy Jones' blood bank. They just fizzle up into salty nothing. It's scary. It's scary to be a vampire. It's a dangerous life.
Somebody must have done this joke at some point where
vampires?
where a pirate like walks the plank and goes underwater, and then like everything goes dark and they wake up and they're in a room that smells like really fresh, clean plastic and leather, and somebody's in a referee's outfit in front of them, and they're like, "Welcome to Davy Jones's Foot Locker."
If nobody has, we should pitch it to Foot Locker as a Halloween time commercial. And then because then the pirate gets like a pair of like Air Jordans or something, and they like jump back up onto the boat, right? And then they're like,
and dunk in the crow's nest.
Yeah, exactly. And the other pirates are all like, "Whoa, I'm so sorry, we tried to kill you."
We're all going to Davy Jones's Foot Locker. Everybody's like jumping over the side.
They'll jump off. Yeah. That's a good ad. In 1998.
How was there? I was about to ask you a question, and then I realized it was I was about to ask you how old you were when you
almost 40
still believed in something like vampires, or like thought they could be out there. But then I remembered that you are
almost
a pretty
40.
devout cryptozoologist. Yeah. So I was like, oh, that question doesn't work.
Why? When did you stop believing in real, actual things that are out there? Real, actual things that definitely exist. When did you stop believing in this? How about elk? When did you stop believing in elks, Jason?
I mean, I've never seen one.
When was the last time you believed in a seahorse? You jerk.
No, I definitely vividly remember being like said 8 or 9, and like looking out into the darkness in a car and being like, there's probably vampires out there. Like, that's probably a thing.
Yeah.
It's really out there. And I'm not like a diehard skeptic on everything. I leave a lot of space for all the stuff that I couldn't possibly know or understand.
Sure, yeah,
but
of course.
I don't actually believe that there's vampires.
Sure.
Like, you know.
Well, that's
other things that, you know, are more flexible.
Sure.
In terms of what could be out there.
I didn't do a lot of horror when I was young because I had a very overactive imagination and I would wet my bed. Those are separately. I just would also wet my bed. But I don't know if it was just that I didn't have a lot of contact with things such as vampire, but I never really believed that movie monsters were real monsters. I did believe, you know, I thought there was like an ominous presence around the compost bin in the backyard. But yeah. I didn't like think that there might be a Frankenstein out there. You know, there was never. I like played Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. You know what I mean? And so I think I was like, these are monsters that are in a game. These are like fun things that are in media. The things that are in the real world are much, much scarier.
I mean, that is true.
Which is, well, it's true in a much more tragic way as an adult, right? But I just thought that, you know, I think having never read anything about cosmic horror, I think in my head what scared me was a child's innate version of cosmic horror. You know what I mean? There's just like
well, I mean, just like
undefined anything out there, right?
Yeah. Like the dark basement stairs. What is
exactly
that? You know?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I always, when I was a kid, had a clear idea of like, oh, there's probably a wolf man behind the boiler.
Yeah.
Like most of my fears were much more amorphous like that. But I definitely, like, there was a time when I was like, all right, vampires are probably real.
I mean, they're well documented.
Everything I need to know about them so I can figure out like how I'm going to find them.
Yeah. I mean, when you're 9, vampires are as represented in your media consumption and as likely as dinosaurs or like people you haven't met. You know what I mean? It's just like a guy who lives in a cabin on a mountain. That sounds fake. As much as a vampire does.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Portugal? Where's that?
Yeah, what is it even?
When you're young enough that you don't know the difference between the pretend like foreign countries and the real ones.
Yeah, I still get fooled by that.
Well, I know you've said that you didn't watch horror movies much as a kid or monster movies much as a kid because you had that, like, you would be genuinely frightened of them.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I always wonder about horror movies is, like, I know people who can't watch a lot of stuff that I do watch because it's just too much.
Yeah.
You know, as I know you do too. Like, that just, you know, whenever I've had, you know, I like to have horror movie parties and Halloween, you know, watch marathons, and there's always the friends of mine who I let them know it's happening, and they're all, but I know they don't want to do that.
Yeah, they just
because something about it will just upset them too much.
Yeah.
And I wonder about that because, I mean, part of the appeal of a horror movie traditionally is always supposed to have been that people want to get scared.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're like, oh, I want to watch this thing that's going to scare me. But then how much does it really, if you're actually enjoying the film, how much does it actually scare you?
Right?
Because all of the people who don't want to watch those seem much more genuinely scared.
Yeah.
So like, I wouldn't say that I like horror because I like to get scared.
Yeah.
And in fact, like, when I do encounter something that, I mean, I don't really get scared by any movies in that way anymore. But I do find some things like upsetting. Yes. And I don't particularly like watching movies that just upset or disgust me.
Yeah, same.
So in that sense, like, there's other people who would have a way higher tolerance for a lot of different horror films than I would.
Yeah.
But but I don't think they're watching it because they enjoy being upset. I think they're just enjoying that content.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I think also there's some people get some joy out of being like, I can watch this thing that would be upsetting to other people, right? There's like certainly like an outer fringe of like, I don't know, the like guinea pig films or like things that are just like someone dissecting another alive human and that's the whole movie. Or like there's this movie, I don't even want to say what it is because it was recommended to me and I watched it and I was like, oh, but it's like just like a woman who's a prostitute and then a trucker picks her up and then he just has her in the back of a truck and tortures her for however long the movie is. You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't get, I feel like the joy people are getting out of that is being like, oh, this is so upsetting. I bet other people would not want to watch this. You know what I mean? I feel like that has to be part of it. Because just as a sensory experience, it's not nice.
Yeah. No, and then like I've sat through films that genuinely upset me before and been glad that I did, but it's because the film was going towards something else. Like it wasn't just for its own sake. And I'm not judging people who want to.
Sure.
Like
if that's whatever you want, then that's great.
Yeah. Whatever. It's all, if nobody's really getting hurt, I don't give a shit. What
exactly.
You're looking at.
Exactly.
But I mean, that's sort of the thing, right? Like, I guess the classic sort of psychological explanation is just that we want a safe space to experience unsafe things.
Sure.
You want to film, and I can get that in some ways. Like, but again, I have to go back to being a kid for it to actually work. Like being a kid going through a haunted house.
Yeah.
At a carnival. Like, I used to really like to do that, and it would genuinely scare the shit out of me.
Sure.
Like, I was a kid who would get scared by things. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I know it's all fake. Like, no, I'm walking through a dark room, and like, I know it's safe. I paid money to get in here, but I'm still genuinely scared. But again, like, not after I was a teenager. Like,
sure.
So, but then what? And maybe this is just yet another version of, hey, Jim, some people are different than us. And isn't that weird?
It is weird.
Other people have different interactions with things. But I do just genuinely wonder, like, when people go to see horror movies or want to see horror movies, how many of those people are wanting to do it because it will actually give them that, like, haunted house feeling of like, oh, what's gonna happen? Oh, I don't know. Oh, but then they know that they'll get to leave at the end of it,
right? That's a good question. I feel like I sort of missed out on. I feel like when I was a kid, I did not have that blood-brain barrier between what was scary, between the feeling of being scared in real life, and so which is why I didn't. It was partially my decision to not watch horror things, but it was also partially my parents, because I would just be freaked out and not go to sleep. You know what I mean? I would I didn't have that, like, that was a scary thing, but I'm in a safe space. I was just like mortified until something could make me forget what I was, you know what I mean? Like, it could put me into another emotional space. So I just didn't for a long time. And I think I missed out on, maybe there would have been a precious moment in the middle where I would have toughened up just enough to be like, I'm in a safe space, but I can really feel this terror. But I wasn't watching scary things at that point, if I hit that point. And then I made it to the point where I am now, which I feel like I think that I bet if I knew how to, like, let my guard down, I bet if I went to therapy specifically for this, I could get to a place where I would be genuinely scared in movies again. Because I think now I have built up a very intentional block, right? Where when I'm in a movie, I'm like, I am in a safe space. Or if I'm, you know what I mean? I like know very consciously, and I remind myself consciously that I can't. That no one, they're not going to let me die, right? It's just a movie or whatever, a roller coaster or a haunted house or whatever it is. But I do feel like, I also, in addition to not liking things that upset me, I also don't like it when I don't like jump scares. I find them unpleasant. I don't. There's like certain ways that the movies can like shock your system that I don't like. I like sort of, I don't know. I don't know. And I think a lot of people do like that. I think a lot of people like it when something like pops around the corner and it's like boogity, and you're like, you know what I mean? But for me,
I guess so. Yeah, and like nice. Those can get me. Like, I'll, because it's
it's a thing popping out of nowhere. There's
quiet
no
time,
one that
loud
doesn't
time.
get,
You're like,
right?
"Bah!" Yeah, like that's just a reflex.
Yeah.
But it's not like maybe I guess if that was really well integrated into some sort of
Sure.
I don't know suspense setup that I cared about,
Yeah.
then it getting me would matter.
Right.
I don't know. I'm still much more. I mean, I'm trying to think of the last times I was really sort of frightened by something.
Yeah.
It might have been the first time I watched Inferno by Dario Argento.
Oh, okay. That
And
movie
it-
is
that-
100% tone.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing that gets me is tone,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like because it's not like I never don't know it's a movie,
Right.
but also
Because how could you?
Yeah, but also like part of the joy of a film is giving myself over to it,
Yeah.
at least on some level.
Of course.
And it's not like I think like, oh, these things are really. I'm never sitting there like, oh no, what's going to happen to this person or what's going to happen here. But if I'm actually vibing with it aesthetically,
Yeah.
and it goes into a tonal space that produces some sort of dread in me. I guess that's really what I would feel. It's like dread as opposed
Yeah.
to fear. I don't
Yeah.
fear that something's going to happen to me, but I do start to feel that dread. And I do just remember that opening, or like the first big set piece where the woman is diving down into the water.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just so... It's not a tension setup. I'm not like
No.
waiting for the tension to be broken. It's just being there. And just being in that tonal space is that's the closest I come to being like scared by something. But
Sure.
that's something that I really enjoy being in.
Yeah.
But it's like listening to some sort of pulsating minor key
Yeah.
piece
Yeah,
of
exactly.
music, right? Where it's like, oh, this is just making me feel something, regardless of any specific content.
Yes.
I'm just in this emotional space.
Yeah. Which is awesome.
Yeah.
I think that it should be a goal of art, right? Is to put you into some sort of emotional space.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like that's a movie firing on all cylinders, right? You're not necessarily like, oh no, the Wolfman's going to jump out from behind the radiator. You're like everything just feels weird right now.
Yeah, and when you can suffuse a feeling like that, like it's different than, I mean, we were talking about jump scares, but there's non-scare versions of that, right? Of that sort of like reflex action emotion, right? Like you know, I'll cry at any dumb movie that hits those like buttons. That's like, here's sad things that are happening and people are emoting. I'm like, oh, but I don't actually care.
Right.
Like I'm not actually sad about it. It's just, pressing those buttons in the right order to get that physical reaction, which people will hold up as like, well, it made you feel something. It's like, not really.
Right. Yeah. You're like, not anything with any depth to it.
Yeah. It gave me literally like a literal knee-jerk reaction.
Yes.
It's like somebody's testing my reflexes.
Yeah.
But it wasn't something that I sat with that sort of carried me through and put me to a space where I had to actually feel about it.
Right.
Maybe someday we'll talk about a movie that does that. But for right now, spook shows.
I mean, there are horror movies that do that, right? I don't know. We'll talk about it. We'll get there.
Well, there's horror movies that do that aesthetic, like I said, that aesthetic suffusion, but it's all in service of this overall like dread.
Yeah.
Right. Like one of the things about horror is that every horror movie that's really good has ultimately the same thing to say.
Sure.
Right? Like, you're doomed.
Right.
And the things are horrifying and you can't escape it.
Yeah.
Even the dumbest horror movies or like the simplest ones, like that's why slashers always come back at the end, right? Like part of it's a financial motivation. Obviously they want to make sequels, but then part of it is just like the requirement of the feeling of the genre. Like it can't be finished. You can't, like, it's the difference between a thriller and a horror movie. A thriller can come to a happy ending.
Yeah.
A horror movie doesn't, because you are in a world that is against you.
Yeah. Yeah, because you cannot win. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So like the really the best, most atmospheric ones that like an Argento or like Kubrick's Shining.
Sure.
I don't know. Other
That's
ones
it.
that come to mind, but those are the two that just pop in immediately. You know, that operate on such a high tonal level. It does become the whole movie is just pointing you towards this dreaded, not even finished, just at some point it stops and you're like, okay, yeah, I was in that world, and that world was just that.
Yeah. And if it's good, it probably stays with you for a while. You like leave the movie and you're like, I still feel bad. I just typed King into IMDb thinking it would tell me all of Stephen King's movies, which it was like, here's a bunch of movies about kings.
Why are you looking up Stephen King's movies?
Colleen watched one that we didn't watch, and I saw part of it, and I wanted to mention it to you, but I can't remember what it was or what I wanted to say about it, so I thought...
Was it from one of the later ones?
It was definitely later era.
I was like, because I feel like we definitely hit everything.
We hit a ton.
From the 70s and 80s.
That makes sense.
And then in the 90s, it starts to spin out of control.
That makes sense. It was one of the ones directed by that dude that he loves that I think is a dope.
Mick Garris?
Yeah.
Was she watching The Stand?
No. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to get there. I still don't... I looked him up again after she was watching it, and I was like, why does anyone care about... He like wrote Hocus Pocus, and that's the only good thing he's ever done in his whole life. I don't get why people...
Well, he directed that one Bonkers King one. I'm trying to remember the name of it. What was it like?
Oh, Sleepwalkers.
Skinwalkers? Sleepwalkers. Yeah.
I'm looking again right now. It's like Sleepwalkers, trash, 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 trash. That's it. Riding the Bullet. It's a Stephen King movie called Riding the Bullet.
That was on my long list of stuff, but then I think at a certain point I was like, well, we have enough Mick Garris. We've covered that.
It's one of the most nothing movies I've ever seen.
Well, it's also one of his crime stories, right?
No. It's about...
Oh, no? It's a horror?
It's about... Well, sort of. It's like about a kid who his dad's dead and his mom is sick, and his friends are... he's like dating a girl, and she gets tickets to go see John Lennon play, and he's going to go to see John Lennon, and then he finds out his mom's sick, so he hitchhikes to go see his mom, but along the way, everyone who picks him up is like maybe actually dead, and then one of them is David Arquette, and David Arquette's like, I'm a ghost from the beyond, I'm here to take you to death, you have to pick who's going to die, you or your mother, and he's like, I don't know, my mom, and then his mom dies. That's it, that's the whole story. But it's like, I don't know, it's 90% of the movie is just a kid hitchhiking and getting in 4 cars and then getting out of and then walking into a hospital, and you're like, none of this... And I don't know. It made me mad.
I have the Stand that Garris did, the TV miniseries that everybody loves.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it. It just came in the like cheapo box set that I got that had Night Shift in it.
Yeah. Okay.
Or Graveyard Shift.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I gotta have that. So, but every time I think of the Stand, there's only one thing I ever think about anymore, and it's so in the Stand. I guess the disease that kills a whole bunch of people, like the plague that gets released, is called Captain Trips.
Captain Trips.
Yeah, like that's the name of the virus or the plague or whatever it is.
Okay.
But I didn't know that because I never read The Stand and I never watched The Stand.
Sure.
And I was working in a comic book store at one point when Marvel was putting out a whole bunch of comics based on The Stand.
Okay.
It was like Stephen King's The Stand this, Stephen King's The Stand that, and they were like delving into all the different parts of all the different characters. And I was just reading the invoice as something came in, and I just looked at a book that, from my vantage point, was called The Stand Captain Trips.
That's so good. That 4-word sentence has 3-act structure. The dude's the captain of standing. Number 1 at standing. But he tripped. Oh, that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I think of it a lot.
Captain Trip. That sounds like a brand name. I
Right?
mean, whatever. Who am I to question
again,
Stephen
I'm not going to read the
King,
book,
but-
probably.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not going to find out why it's called Captain Trips. But it is the stand captain. Well, I have no idea if we said enough for an episode. We probably
Who knows?
did. We talked long enough.
Yeah, we said. Yeah.
I'm going to pull things out of that.
Sorry.
I know there's other stuff I wanted. What?
I was just apologizing for you having
to the audience.
No,
sorry,
to you.
sorry. I'm
not
sorry
for
to.
them. They came here by their own choice, Jason.
Well, some of them. We don't talk about the others.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry to them. I'm sorry to the audience. I love the audience.
fair.
I'm sorry to them. I'm sorry to Craig and Brett.
That's true. Yeah.
I'm sorry to the whole Split Tooth crowd.
Everyone else on Split Tooth Media.
Sorry to
I'm
you.
sorry to-
I'm sorry to me. I'm sorry to my family.
I'm sorry to the Institute
staying
of
up late
Podcasting.
doing this. Yeah. I'm sorry to Mick Garris. Like,
I'm
you're
not.
probably really nice. I like your podcast seems nice and everybody seems to like you. I'm sorry that we hate your work. I'm sorry to I'm just sorry in general.
Yeah.
I love you all.
I love most of you.
Now we got to figure out who it is that I love that you don't. That makes me a terrible person.
Pol Pot.
Shit.
You've got the Tommy Ache Blues, the Tommy Ache Blues, the Tommy Ache Blues. You've got the Tommy Ache Blues from eating all the candy you did. Oh, you.
Cinesthesia is produced by Iguana Donald Studios and distributed by Split Tooth Media. Featuring music by The Cocktails, courtesy of Tight Ship Records. Theme music by Soft Healer.
You did.
Cinesthesia is recorded in front of two brothers. One always tells the truth, one always tells a lie. It gets old fast, let me tell you. Those dicks.
The Tommy Ache Blues, the look on your face is telling the news. You've got the Tommy Ache Blues from eating all the candy you did. From eating all the candy you did.
If anyone listens to this, shame on you.
Cinesthesia.